McKelvie, to be followed by Graham Simpson.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. What is this so-called reform benefit system that the Tories have been celebrating as a means of covering up its vicious cuts from the incomes of the most vulnerable? This is a Westminster culture of blame, of punishment, whether it's the disabled, the mentally ill, migrants, refugees, Muslims, the Tories have successfully fanned the flames of anger away from their own failures. There are a great many of the fundamental components built into the current system that have more of a flavour of Dickensian patronage rather than the 21st century. I imagine that the just completed Scottish Government consultation on social security will contain both expert and end-user reports on how the existing system has made them feel diminished, humiliated, demoralised and helpless. That message is reiterated by groups including Inclusion Scotland, the Glasgow Disability Alliance, Engender and the Health and Social Care Alliance. They're all calling for the same main principles, guided by human rights standards and set in legislation. Engender highlights the disproportionate effect that welfare reform has had upon women. They cite these figures. Disabled women are amongst the most affected by social security policy. Over the course of the current UK Parliament alone, £4.4 billion worth of cuts will come from disabled people, a majority of whom are women. In Scotland, 55% of those on personal independence payments are women and are 65% in receipt of attendance allowance. It's bad enough, Presiding Officer, to be punished for being a claimant. To be doubly punished because you're a woman with a disability is frankly obscene. Our Scottish system must be more positive and support... Yes, certainly.
Adam Tompkins.
I'm very grateful to Christina McKelvie for giving way. Christina McKelvie is a great and passionate advocate of human rights, and I wonder what her position is on the right to work and whether she will join me in celebrating the facts that there are more jobs in the British economy than ever before, more disabled people in work in Britain than ever before, and more women in work than ever before.
Christina McKelvie.
I would be more than happy to join Mr Tompkins in celebrating that right if he signs my motion condemning the UK Government's report, the report from the UN into the UK Government's treatment of people with disabilities through welfare reforms. So quid pro quo, Mr Tompkins. Our Scottish system must be more positive and support a culture of change around social security. Our approach needs to be inclusive, to be involved in co-production with people who access the system, and the whole package should be guided by international human rights standards, as I said, set in that legislation. Presiding Officer, as you know, I continue to campaign on behalf of motor neuron disease sufferers. The current Motor Neuron Disease Scotland campaign, Let's Get Benefits Right for People with MND, reveals the story of Yvonne McNee and her dad, Bill Lavery, who live in Hamilton. Sadly, Bill died as a result of MND in 2014. And Yvonne says, and I quote her, "I speak as the broken-hearted daughter of a great man who was taken from me by this cruel illness. My dad was diagnosed in July 2014 and passed away in September 2014. I was involved in applying for benefits for my dad during this short time, and he worried about the income of the application every day. This was horrible to watch and financially a terrible time as we tried to secure the best deal for our dad. MND sufferers have enough to deal with without constant fear of benefits review. Their condition will not improve. The day before he died, my dad was awarded his benefits. There are many heartbreaking stories like that one. But do we blame this man for being so inconsiderate to have had a brutal terminal illness? Then in his dying days, do we have to have him worry about whether he will have those benefits payments? Is there some bizarre Tory rationale that generally asserts that illness and disability is something we can control? I think most of you will respond by saying, don't be ridiculous. Of course, you can't blame people for having health issues, but the truth is that this is exactly what the current system does. In effect, it says, how dare you have a long-term health condition? Get on your bike. We are now going to receive the largest ever transfer of powers, yes. It is still less than I would like to see, and it is challenging to try and redesign a social security system when you only have access to 15% of the funds. This is where we can really start to make a positive change, though, Presiding Officer. I'm positive about this, to the lives of 1.4 million people in Scotland. We need to recognise the context, the simple fact that the proportion of the Scottish Social Security budget that will be devolved in Scotland amounts to only £2.7 billion of a total of £17.5 billion spent in every year. This government, our government, has worked hard to find out where the problems are, to consult with the individuals and the organisations involved, to consult with this place. We now have strong data to work from so they can make the right decisions. We have set down 5 essential principles for moving forward, and we have a national social security agency who should administer those payments. Payments rather than claims. A right rather than something you have to scream for. Made from within a balanced society that recognises and appreciates our diversity in all its colours, shapes, races, disabilities, gender, sexuality and much, much more. Any one of us could be reaching out for that kind of support at any point in our lives. Never assume you won't be one of those such individuals. We know that what we need to do. We need to make sure that this transition is efficient and seamless to deliver
You
on
must
fairness,
close, Ms
dignity,
McKelvie.
equality and respect. And we won't be given lessons by a failed Tory policy.